I'm here again with lovely Laimei Yeung, hypnotherapist and nutrition coach, and a deeper dating expert. And today we have an amazing topic, a continuation of last week's topic about self-confidence. And today we're going a level higher. We're going to be talking about self-empowerment. Hi, Laimei.
Hi, Zarina. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being back. Thanks for being back. Okay, so you're an expert on dealing with anxiety, dealing with stress. So you talked a lot about resilience, and now you're planning to integrate all this knowledge into a new program about which we're going to be talking a bit later. But what I'd like us to discuss now is, first of all, what is self-empowerment and how is this different than self-confidence? How is this the umbrella term of self-confidence? What does it include?
Good question, Zarina. For myself, years and years, and also when working with clients, I kind of thought it was the same, right? If you're self-confident, you have your own power. So, but working years and years and years, I saw that even self-confident people can still lack certain skills, like putting up boundaries or speaking up, you know, or might still have some fears, like fear of abandonment, fear of rejection. So I started to do some research, right? And for me, I'm speaking for myself as a therapist and as a coach, self-empowerment is really that ability, you know, of having your own tools to really believe in yourself and really using these tools. So I just mentioned speaking up. It's like acknowledging that you have a voice, that you take in space when you're with other people, right? That you really are confident, self-aware about talking with other people. You're confident in putting up boundaries. You know when to put up boundaries. It's easy for yourself to say no to people. So you fill up your own cup instead of filling up other one's cups. And an important aspect is also the inner critic. I think when you have self-empowerment, a big power is to use your own language, right? Instead of beating yourself up, which we often do, right? We're humans, right? We often beat ourselves up. Really changing that in like an inner cheerleader, really motivating yourself, right? And if I can add the fourth thing, self-empowerment is also recognizing your core gifts, right? I spoke about speaking up, trusting yourself, right? Trusting your intuition, really cherishing your core gifts, right? You can maybe be in relationships, or you can maybe be in a job where you don't have the possibility to speak up, or you're really ignoring your own intuition. But if you acknowledge that the intuition is there to tell you certain things, right? This is really, really important. And I think if you have these skills, if you can work on all these four things that I just mentioned, then for me, this means self-empowerment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense to me. Moreover, that this more or less covers what I was talking about in another video that I made last week. Of course, in my own definitions, in my own view of the world, because everybody sees it, but in a different way. But yes, it goes along the lines of what my thoughts are, especially because when you said that you should be following your intuition and know what you're doing. The last thing that you mentioned, I can't remember what definition you gave it, but this comes very close to what I call purpose. When you're working with purpose and when you're living with purpose in life, because then you're absolutely convinced that that this is the path you should follow, and then you give it all without worry whether you're being judged or not.
Yeah, completely. I think if you mention purpose, I think you can only live your purpose. I truly believe you can only live your purpose if you're aligned with yourself, if you're aligned with your gifts, with your values, if you truly see yourself for the person you are, right? If you know all that, if you're so aware of all these things, then you know what you're good at, you know what your purpose is, or you know which path to go. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
So very often, though, people feel anxious. I mean, this is as you mentioned at the beginning, before we started talking, on the other end of the extreme of being self-confident. So how do you move people from being anxious to being self-confident? Even if they want to aim at being self-confident, there's always the feeling that draws them down, drags them down.
Good question. So one spectrum is anxiety and fears. The other spectrum is self-confidence and self-empowerment, even self-love. Why is that? Because I'm going to go a little bit back, right? If I would be working with you, I would bring you back to your childhood, right? In hypnotherapy, we would go and look for the trauma, right? Small or big, can be whatever what. Right? Anxiety is most of the time unconsciously learned, right? We often absorb it from our caretakers, our parents. Often it's also genetic. One of our parents has it, anxiety. And what I see in my practice is that often people have anxiety because as a child, they're often a rebel, or they're often someone who wants to take in space, or they are self-confident, because we are born as self-confident babies, right? You don't have any baby who's shy, who wants to crawl away. It doesn't exist, right? As a baby, we are self-confident. So there's one truth. Some people, of course, other children, you have these children who like to perform, like to shine. But if you have caretakers who want to make you small, because also for them that feels safer, right? They're not going to do it on purpose, right? They're going to do it because it feels safer for your parents.
Right.
Yeah, it's easier to control, and they also have it, right? If they're anxious, they're not going to let you rule.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be out of balance, right? So often anxiety comes in as a coping mechanism. Right. I saw it with one of my clients. Let's call him John. Both of the parents heavy alcoholics. He was a confident boy, like until 3-4 years old. The parents very emotionally absent, only present with the bottle, of course. He never really had someone to communicate with, to share his passions. And he was a communicative boy. He loved to talk, but there was no one. Right? So for him, anxiety came as a coping mechanism. As a child, if you have this huge talent to connect, if no one's connecting to you, you don't want to be different than the other ones. So what do? You just climb into your shell, just like the other ones, right? Does that make sense?
And so do you use hypnotherapy then to take people out of anxiety, to clear these emotions that were attached to their childhoods?
Yeah, so we work on an emotional level. We go back to the cause, first of all, of anxiety. When you feel and when you see where it comes from, often my clients, they discover like, oh, I had a voice. Oh, I was confident. Oh, I was quite a rebel. They see that person again, which they probably already forgot about, right? And that person, that part of them that was covered up in layers, that rebel or that people that wanted to have a voice, wanted to take in space, we take that person out again, right? And using that person, that part of the client, slowly on, we make them into an empowered person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so what you're saying is actually the two spectrums of this axis of self-confidence and anxiety. They could coexist in a person, which means that the person can be at the same time self-confident and anxious, but he's not self-empowered. But once you give him the tools to show up his self-confidence that he naturally is, that he naturally has, then he becomes empowered. Am I coming close?
One point, yes, I agree. So you can have self-confident people who often don't speak up, or often they feel anxiety, because you have a whole spectrum of anxiety, right? You have phobias, you have OCDs, you have anxiety disorder, PTSD. So you can have someone who having a phobia, which is confident, right? But most of the people who suffer from anxiety, their self-esteem is low, right? They're not going to be that self-confident, right? But again, self-empowerment for me, it's going a little bit further than self-confidence. It's really recognizing the gifts you have, the values, your talents, and developing these talents, right? Where self-confidence, it's more a feeling. I feel self-confident in myself, right? Self-empowerment for me is using, we often talk about resilience, you and me, Zarina. It's taking these resilience skills, and working on self-confidence and self-empowerment.
So you're at the moment designing a program called From Anxiety to Self-Empowerment, starting on the 15th of May, which you mentioned is also going to include deeper dating tools.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. Why did you decide to include deeper dating tools in this program, in such a type of a program?
Good question. So I mainly work on anxiety and fear, which you already mentioned. And I think 90% of my clients, the end result is always empowerment, right? They recognize what they're good at. They're more aligned with their purpose, they can speak up, they can stand out, that they have much more confidence and power in themselves. When I signed up for a course of deeper dating of the famous psychologist in New York, Ken Page, I did it for myself because my own marriage was kind of crumbling down, and I really needed this extra support in a group, not to go and date someone else, of course, because I was married, but to really become clear of like, who am I and what do I want? Because I was kind of lost, I was kind of lost. So going through this program and then afterwards being mentored myself through Ken Page, I really found that if you're clear about who you are, if you start to cherish your core gifts, like for me, that was speaking up, right? Which I often didn't do in my personal relationships. I always wanted to keep the calm, right? But then really becoming clear, like, oh no, yeah, this is my core gift. I should speak up, I'm an adult now, I can speak up, right? This is what I really need to have a healthy relationship. This shifted me like 500%, right? Acknowledging these core gifts. Yeah, that was huge for me. That was really huge. Yeah.
Speaking up is especially a problem for women because it's the societal pattern model that you're supposed to be obedient and not speak up your mind, because the feminine is perceived to be a bit more timid, receptional and so on, but this doesn't mean not to speak up, and this is where a big confusion comes. We're supposed to express ourselves.
Yeah, that's speaking up is a big part. Yeah, you say for women, also for a lot of men. I work with a lot of men, and even for a lot of men, really speaking up, speaking your truth, having the courage, to go into conflict, because conflict, we often perceive conflict as being bad, right? Where if you go back to the philosophers, arguing was a good thing, right? Yeah. You needed to argue, right? But coming back to self-expression, speaking up as a woman, a lot of women, they're silenced, right? And often through their own mom, right? Because your own mom probably also had the same thing, right? Your parents, they learn what they lived, and from generations on generations, it goes over. So as a woman doing this work on yourself to speak up, and then even giving it to your own daughters or your own son, this is amazing. Yeah, this is amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. So how can you then help people transform? What have you included in the program? How can you move them from anxiety to self-empowerment? What tools will they learn?
Yeah. So the program is 8 weeks. And it's a hybrid. It's a combination of hypnotherapy, where I regress people in a group setting, an online group setting. And we go back to the real cause, the real reason why they're anxious, why they can't speak up, why they don't feel safe to be seen, why they have this inner critic instead of an inner cheerleader in their mind. Then we do the deep, profound work, and then with techniques of NLP, cognitive behavior therapy, internal family systems, we shift that, right? As you know, hypnotherapy, we work on the brain. We make new neural pathways to instill that confidence and that self-empowerment. Next to the hypnotherapy sessions, which we do, I do coaching. So it's 1 week hypnotherapy and then 1 week coaching. And there we discuss the techniques of deeper dating, of Ken Page, who go deep, you know, into the self, discovering your own core gifts, leading with your own core gifts, also becoming more clear on relationships of deprivation and relationships of inspiration, which is very interesting, right? As a person, if you have a low self-esteem, you often attract really depriving relationships, right? But you can shift that. You can shift that. So again, it's 1 week hypnotherapy and 1 week of coaching. So I kind of balance the two. During the hypnotherapy, it's in a group session, so there's a maximum of 10 participants. In the comfort of their own home, of course. And then the week after, I introduce the principles of Ken Page, and then I also do some coaching individually with each person.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we can make an option for pre-sign up for this program, for people to express their interest, just to be on the list before you launch it. And I just maybe unrelated, but I'm just going to come up with a joke. Actually, a joke that my partner made this morning. He asked me, so what are you going to be talking about with Laimei? And I said, we're going to be talking about self-confidence. And he said, oh, that's a great topic right now when you don't meet people.
But that's a good point. Right, that's a good point, because that's probably also a big difference between self-confidence and self-empowerment.
Exactly. Yes.
Self-confidence, you use it probably with others. It radiates on others. Where self-empowerment is something you really need now, because maybe you're working from home. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you need to work on your business. You need to find a new job. Maybe your relationships at home, because you're all stuck at home, it's not working. So doing your own inner work, you know, that's so healing. If you do your own work, your other relationships are going to mirror that. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Serena. So I would say it's a good point to work.
Yeah. And that's also the major difference between self-confidence and self-empowerment. Working on the qualities within, the self-perception, right? The image you have.
Yeah. So taking it a little bit further. Right, developing techniques for whatever challenge comes up, right? Is it the coronavirus? Is it another virus? Is it losing your job? Is it you know, breaking up with your husband or with your boyfriend? So it's really about techniques. You know, I'm really passionate about techniques, because you can do a lot of transformation, but really with taking action, you stabilize the nervous system. And if you had trauma in your childhood, and who didn't have trauma, right? If you have any trauma in your childhood, you need continuous action, right? And this you really do while using techniques. Is it breath work? Is it meditation, hypnosis? But really on a consistent base. So that's what the program is about. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're going to put a link below for people who would like to be on the list, on the what do you call that list? The interest list.
The RSVP list.
Yes. And if you'd like to get a consultation with Laimei, I'll also put a link below.
Yeah. I give 60 minutes of free intakes for people who want to discuss their challenges, whatever's going on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Laimei. I'll see you next week with the topic of deeper dating and how this helps relationships. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Serena. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.